psych presentation, the first part that we'll go through is the reason that this study was done. And a lot of it has to do with mainly this point right here, whether it's the determinism versus free will, meaning that like if our personality traits play a part in what we will do, or whether or not that, even though we are programmed a certain way, that is truly up to us and what actions and decisions we'll continue to take. And so the main point for this study is to not understand like not just any actions, but whether or not our personality, like I said, traits or certain characteristics will play a part in how healthy we'll develop, or how healthy we will be, or whether or not we can develop like a serious illness from it.
Ready when you are.
So the hypothesis for this study came about when cardiologists began to notice high stress in their patients, since they do see a lot of patients every day. So they suspected this could be a correlation between their behavior and their cardiology. Going back to, again, the main point that certain personality traits can predict how healthy you will be. So for the methods and procedure of this case, they used two different study groups. First one being group A and second one being group B. In group A, these people were found to be more ambitious, eager to compete in their professional and recreational activities, and had a strong desire to win. In group B, these people were a little more laid back, essentially had a lack of a sense of urgency, were satisfied in their present positioning and weren't as focused to continue to move up in their goals or any other sort of higher position in their life. And this because they found that they would spend more time with their family and doing daily recreational activities. And the way that they proceeded to find these people or gather these groups or types of people was they asked the companies that they work for to find basically a type of group A person and a type of group B person. And then they would put these people through tests and surveys to really solidify what group that they would be. So in these tests and surveys that they would then do afterwards, they were mainly looking at their blood work, their daily eating habits, and their daily physical activities as well.
All right, so one of the major takeaways, in fact, the major takeaway from this experiment was just the staggering correlation between type A behavior and chronic heart disease. The creators of this experiment were curious to see like, hey, could this be due to just genetics of type A people increasing risk of CHD, or is it something else? Could it be the smoking, or is it directly just having this type of personality means you're experiencing a lot more stress, and is that what is causing this heart disease? So they ended up patrolling for smoking, and while we now know that smoking does cause CHD, and their experiment and their studies, it showed that type A personality, independent of smoking, did increase the risk of CHD. They ruled out genetics as well. Just back in the 60s, they're not really considering it in so much. And nowadays, like, it's hard to tell between like, hey, is this just gonna be genetically your risk for type A, or is this genetically just your risk for CHD? All right, so the importance of this study cannot be understated. It was one of the earliest studies to investigate the relation between just your psychology and your physical health. And this spawned many follow-on studies into the relationship between a person's behavior and the risk for heart disease. And it also kind of spawned a whole new field of psychology, just looking into how your psychology is going to impact your overall health, called health psychology. Some follow-on studies determined very specifically that if you have a type A personality, you're over twice as likely to develop coronary heart disease, you're over 5 times as likely to have heart problems, and just you're going to have more heart attacks as well. And this was shown to be independent of age, cholesterol, and your smoking. And the root cause of this is believed to be that type A people have a basically exaggerated stress response. They release more hormones, they have bigger like blood pressure changes, bigger heart rate changes, and just over the years this wears down on your arteries, your blood vessels, and everything else in your cardiovascular system, leading to damage. Alrighty. Some direct applications of this research in the modern world. There is a new field of psychology called cardiac psychology, which is specifically investigating the correlation between type A behaviors and CHD. And there's also been some more recent studies investigating type A behavior, specifically in regards to traffic collisions. And they found that type A individuals tend to have increased chances of road rage, traffic accidents, traffic tickets. And as well, they've been developing a new type of personality, type D. People with this behavioral type tend to have increased presence of negative emotions, they tend to be overall more pessimistic, and they're typically socially anxious as well. And it's discovered that this group of people have increased risk of heart problems, high anxiety, and depression levels as well. And there's some discussion over whether or not this is just its own category or just a refinement or subtype of type A. There's been more studies also recently into just whether type A is genetically inherited or it's just like a nature versus nurture thing, well, nurture related thing. And more specifically, there's been some research into treatment for type A personality to decrease risk of heart problems. And with that, a very common way to do it is just talk to a psychologist, be like, hey, I believe I might be type A, I feel really stressed all the time, what can I do to avoid developing heart problems? And this can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people for treatments. It can be like, hey, go do yoga, that's like a very like stereotypical one. Oh, eat different foods, and there's a lot of preventative treatment you can do to prevent heart disease, even if you have a type A personality.